everybody. Welcome to the Daily Dose. Today, I want to talk with you about doubt. And I want to suggest that experiencing doubt is not something we should shy away from, but instead, doubt is a normal part of being human. I think sometimes in the church or in our faith lives, we equate doubt with being a bad word. We think for some reason that if we read the Bible, all of our questions about faith and life will simply be answered. We look at the story of, for example, one of Jesus' disciples, Thomas, who couldn't believe that Jesus could have ever been resurrected. So he asks, "Lord, can I touch the holes in your hands?" And now, forever, poor Thomas has been assigned doubting as a descriptor with his name. And whenever we hear a story about the disciples at all, we think we would never want to be one of those doubting Thomases. The idea of doubt comes with some baggage. But I recently heard someone talk about doubt in the context of young people today. This woman named Kara Powell is a researcher and a person who works with high school and college students, and she said, doubt itself isn't toxic, but silence is. Think about that for a minute. The act of doubting, the feelings of doubt, the worry of what doubt will do to us or to our faith, that's not what we should spend our energy on. But the stuffing down of those questions deep inside us, the fear of what will happen if my curiosities or doubts, that silence might actually hurt us or others. And thinking about this idea that doubt isn't toxic caused me to read a Bible story in a different way. In the book of Matthew, chapter 14, Jesus had just finished feeding thousands of people by turning 5 loaves of bread and 5 fish into a feast. And a little later, the disciples get into a boat to go on to the next town ahead of Jesus. They're out on the water, and Jesus goes up to a mountaintop to pray. And by the time evening comes, we read that the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. And then it seems like a mirage coming across the lake, but the next thing the disciples know, Jesus appears to them. Not on some other boat, but on the water, walking on the water. And the disciples, understandably, were spooked. The Bible says they cried out in fear. And then we hear from Peter, and you can almost imagine him steadying himself on the boat, standing up carefully, and saying with a furrowed brow, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." He's doubting what his eyes see and what his mind's processing, and it sure looks like Jesus, but it defies the reality he can imagine. And Jesus replies to Peter with just one word, "Come." And then we read about Peter getting himself out of the boat, walking on the water toward Jesus. And then it's like in a split second, Peter remembers the reality. The waves are really big, the water is really cold. Peter's afraid, and he starts to sink. So he cries out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus reaches out his hand, the Bible says, and catches Peter. And then Jesus says something that we often, I think, interpret as the downside of doubt. "You of little faith," Jesus says, "why did you doubt?" And we've spent a lot of time determining that doubt must be the opposite of faith. But let's look more closely at this story about Peter. What would have happened if Peter hadn't spoken up or cried out? Or backing up a little bit in the story, what if Peter hadn't voiced his earliest doubts, his doubts that the person on the water even was Jesus in the first place? Maybe the author of the book of Matthew wants us to notice something about Peter being, well, human. I actually wonder if Peter is a great reminder that doubts are expected on our journey. It was a risk for Peter to speak up. It took a whole lot of courage. And I imagine it took even more risk for Peter to respond to Jesus' simple command, "Come." And sometimes when we take risks with our faith, some distractions, the wind, the cold waves, the outdoors, they try to derail us. But Peter spoke up, he admitted his fears, and a hand stretched out to catch him. So where are you facing some doubts? Or where are some kids or young people in your life facing those doubts? What would it be like for you to speak up, to cry out, to admit that doubts are real feelings, rather than sinking in silence? I have a feeling that you'll notice Jesus is there to catch you, your doubts and all. Thanks so much for watching The Daily Dose. We would love for you to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or share this with a friend who might be curious and have some doubts as well. Thanks so much.